Hi everyone, this is Carol Keller, independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Illinois in the United States, coming to you today with a card that I've made using the Dandy Garden suite of products as part of my Suite of the Month class for April, which involves that same Dandy Garden suite. What is a Suite of the Month class? Well, each month I feature a different suite of products. If you purchase either a bundle or the whole suite, I will send you the components for both projects that I'm showing in my videos. So if you're interested in that, please contact me for more information, and I hope you can join me on my next Suite of the Month class for May, which involves the Oval Occasions bundle. So I will turn my camera around so that we can get started. All right, so this is the first card that I did. It is a waterfall card, and so what that means is you have a pull tab that makes the components go like a waterfall. Isn't that cute? I haven't done one in a very long time, so I thought that would be a good fun fold to do for our Suite of the Month project for this month. So that is what I did, and the card that I'm going to do is similar to that, but I'm going to use different designer series paper, similar though, from the Dandy Garden pack. Here's another one I did. This was the first one, so same kind of thing. But for this one I had a few kinks to work out, so it doesn't flow as nicely as this, but the one you make will, because I worked out all the problems. So we start with our typical basic white card base, A2 card. A4 works as well, and I will provide measurements for the A4 card as we go along. Or I should say I will provide dimensions in centimeters as well as inches. I did not figure out the dimensions for an A4 card, so the long piece will probably have to be a little bit longer than I have, but certainly the width will work fine. Okay, so what we're going to start with is some stamping. So I have 4 pieces of basic white cardstock. They are all the same size. They are 2 inches by 2.5 inches, or 6.2 centimeters by 5.1 centimeters. And that's what we're going to use to stamp. And then we're going to also stamp on the inside of the card. So we will get our stamping done first. So for the first one, I used a stamp from the Dragonfly Garden set, and I stamped this in Memento Black. And I'm just doing the top of the stamp since that's all that's going to show. And actually I'm going to bring in a little scrap. I just replaced my paper on the table, so I'd like to keep it looking nice. I'm going to bring in a scrap to do my stamping since we'll be stamping off of the card. Give it a little huff since it's been sitting. And stamp it. And then I'm also going to stamp the little bee, again in Memento Black. And I'm stamping him just coming over, heading over to the flower. And the other thing we're going to use the Memento Black for is this image. So again, I'm just going to bring the ink pad to the stamp, since I know I don't need the whole thing. And then for the Dragonfly, I am using Granny Apple Green. And there are 2 dragonflies in the set. I chose the one that has the body that's colored in as opposed to being mostly white, because I liked the contrast that it will provide. And then last but not least, we have, pull it up so you can see, our sentiment and some little moths. So we'll do the sentiment first in Melon Mambo, right in the center. And then we'll bring in basic gray for the moths because I wanted to not have the outline be so prominent. We'll stamp this way and up here. And we'll be coloring those in a moment, but first let's stamp what's on the inside. And I used Blackberry Bliss for that, and I'm going to use it again because we are using Blackberry Bliss Designer Series paper for this one too, from the set, but just a different paper, which I'll show you in a minute. So for our inside, we'll use Your Acts of Kindness are a breath of fresh air, or like a breath of fresh air. And I used a different image, the little dandelion image. That is actually from the Garden Wishes stamp set. And then the little pieces of dandelion flying away as well. And I would say just be careful not to really get it over your sentiment. I did that with the first one and it was just a little bit harder to read. So we'll do like that. And our stamping is done except for the envelope. And while I have the dandelion stamp handy, that's what we will use for the envelope. And our stamping is done. All right, next we're going to do some coloring. So I'm going to bring in my Stampin' Blends. And we are going to start with the light balmy blue. Color in the little bugs. And I'm not doing really much in the way of shading. I'm basically just coloring. And because I'm using the blends, I still have my scrap underneath. Because it does tend to bleed through, the blends tend to bleed through the back. And so that way you don't have to worry about it getting on anything you don't want it to be on by having that extra paper underneath. And next we're going to use the light Bermuda Bay for the Dragonfly. And for the dandelions, I used Granny Apple Green, and I did do just a tiny bit of shading. So I used the dark Granny Apple Green just in here for the shading on the leaf, and the rest with light Granny Apple Green. And then dark Daffodil Delight for the flowers. And then last but not least, the flowers and the bee. So we're going to bring in that light balmy blue again for the wings. And the dark Daffodil Delight for the body. That's right, and we need the balmy blue for these flowers. And I kind of colored outside the lines a little bit because I wanted to make sure that that blue was prominent and showed. And then also for the center of the flowers. And light Melon Mambo for the petals. And again, the Granny Apple Green for the leaves and the stems. So I did do some shading on the bigger ones, the bigger leaves. Well, I guess you can even add it to the smaller ones too. and then light granny apple green for the rest. All right, and now our coloring is done, so it's assembly time. So I'm bringing in the Designer Series paper from the Dandy Garden Designer Series paper set. And actually we can move the scrap out of the way. We don't need that anymore. And I'm just going to use my Stamp and Seal. Actually, I've grabbed my Stamp and Seal Plus, but you can use either one. You can use multi-purpose liquid glue. They will all work. So I have cut this at 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches, and if you're working in metric, just cut it a 1/2 centimeter smaller on each side to layer it and let that white show through a little bit. And I have cut panels in Bermuda Bay, Melon Mambo, Daffodil Delight, and Granny Apple Green, and these are 2 3/4 inches by 2 1/4 inches, or 7 centimeters by 5.8 centimeters. And then we're just going to layer them. I'm going to match them up to what I did on my card. All right, and now we will finish our assembly. So for the next part, we need a piece that's 2 3/4 inches by 9 inches, or 7 centimeters by 22.9 centimeters. And we are going to score it. I'm going to bring in my trimmer. And make sure we get the cutting blade out of the way. And we are going to score at 2 inches, which is 5.1 centimeters, at 2 3/4 inches, which is 7 centimeters, at 3 1/2 inches, which is 8.9 centimeters, and at 4 1/4 inches, which is 10.8 centimeters. And we are going to score those and burnish them with the bone folder. And now to assemble, we'll put the bottom one right here, and you're going to make sure that everything lines up with the score line and the 2 edges, and you'll see that it overlaps a little bit. So because of that, we're going to put the adhesive on here and not here. And again, I'm using my Seal Plus because we want to make sure it has a nice strong hold. And again, making sure that it's lined up correctly. And now for the rest of them, again, we're going to put the adhesive on here and not here to make sure that there's no excess that's going to slow down the mechanism for the waterfall. Again, line it up. Okay, and for the next part, I have a strip that is 3/4 inch by 4 1/4, or 1.9 centimeters by 10.8 centimeters. And this one we are going to attach right at the bottom of that long piece. And we're going to do this before we attach it to the card so we know it's in the right place. And this is going to be the piece that's that holds everything in place so that the mechanism works. So again, we want a nice strong adhesive. And I'm going to use this to sort of make sure that it's centered. I'm going to use my Seal Plus. Tear and tape is also a great alternative to use. And again, you want to make sure you don't go outside of the boundaries. And I'm going to eyeball the center. You could measure also. And then that's going to be attached to the card on either end. And I'm going to use for sure my Seal Plus or tear and tape for that, because there's very little adhesive there, and you want to make sure that it holds so that the mechanism works and it doesn't move. So that is ready to go on the card, but before we do that, we need a pull tab. In the tutorial that I saw, which I got from Split Coast Stampers, they had used an eyelet in here and ribbon, and they had put it right on the bottom of the mechanism. But since I don't have eyelets to use, I had to come up with a different solution. So what I did was I have a piece of cardstock that's 1 inch by 4 inches, and the 4 inches is a little bit arbitrary, and you'll see why in a moment, but it's 1 inch by 4 inches or 2.5 centimeters by 10.1 centimeters. And now I'm going to bring in the Banner's Pick-a-Punch to create the little tab that we're going to pull. And this is what I did. I made it long enough so that I could insert each end into the punch and punch it out. And remember, when you're using this one, always turn it over to make sure that it's straight before you punch and centered. And then I'm going to turn it around and do the same thing on the other end. And using a longer strip just makes it easier to manipulate. Again, centering it. And now the mechanism here is, or the banner, the edge is, this is 1/2 an inch from the bottom of the mechanism to where the points are, to where the side points are. So the 1/2 an inch, which is about 1.3 centimeters. So I'm going to bring my trimmer back in, and I will show you again. I'm going to line it up so that the edge here is at a 1/2 inch and cut that off. And then I'm going to place it on so that it lines up with the one on the other end. Again, using my Seal Plus or tear and tape. All right, and those are lined up nicely. And then I'm going to take my detailed trio punch, and I'm going to use this so that we have a hole to put the ribbon in. And this is a little tricky because you want to keep it as straight as possible in there and make sure it goes through to the back. The straighter it is in there, the better your hole will be centered. And I will tell you that I had one that was not centered exactly, but when I put the ribbon in, you couldn't tell as much. But do pay attention to that. All right, let's try that again. What you want to do is, when you have your adhesive on your piece that has the ribbon through it, it goes on the bottom of the back side, flush with the back side, not the front side, because that has to be the side that moves, but the back side of the card. And make sure you've got good adhesive there. And then we'll put some ribbon through it. And I'm using the Blackberry Bliss striped ribbon. So I'm going to cut a length, maybe 6 inches or so, because you want to make sure it's long enough to be able to loop. We're going to put it through that hole. I'm going to fold it in half, and then in half the other way, and thread it through from the front to the back. And then put the ends through that loop that's created. And so you have to make sure your ribbon is long enough to do that. And if you are using, whoops, came right out on me. Let's try that again. If you are using a ribbon that's stiffer, or for whatever reason, one that decides it wants to come apart, you can put some glue into the part where it sort of knots. All right, and that's good. And then I'm just going to trim it down to make them even. Pretty up the ends a little bit. And so then that's your pull tab. I'm going to make that a little more angled. Okay. And then all we have to do is attach it to the card. And again, the only place it's going to be attached is those two little side tabs. So you want nice strong adhesive. So I'm bringing in my Seal Plus again and laying down a couple of rows on each side. Whoops. I'm going to line it up with the top of the Designer Series paper and then make sure it's edge to edge on the bottom. You want it up pretty far because you don't want the ribbon to hang out too much, just so that you can get it in the envelope. And I've got my Seal Plus on the side, or tear and tape works as well, or multi-purpose liquid glue. And now, if all goes as planned, we have our waterfall. And because the mechanism, it's nice and strong, that's why I did the 2 layers, and because it's on the back, it doesn't interfere with the mechanism. So there we have it. There is our waterfall card for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I really have enjoyed working with this, doing something that I haven't done in so long. And I purposely use the brights. I didn't say that earlier. I purposely use the brights because they coordinate with some of the other colors that are in the Dandy Garden Designer Series paper, and I wanted to change it up a little bit, but you certainly could just bring in the colors that are included in the papers and just use that same color palette as well. Here are the components of the suite. First, we have the Garden Wishes stamp set, and it coordinates with the Dandy Wishes dies, which you see here, and I have cut them out so you can see what the components actually are. There are a lot in the set. There are 2 bees, and the bee is one of the stamps in the set, so you can cut out 2 of them at once. And you have dies to cut out both of these flowers, plus some other different ones that coordinate, some leaves, and you can create a 4-piece flower that is very dimensional and very pretty. So those are the dies that come with the set and what they look like. Another part, the other bundle that is part of the suite, is the Dragonfly Garden Bundle, which comes with the Dragonfly Garden stamp set and the Dragonfly Punch. And there are a couple of different stamps that you can stamp and then cut out with the punch with the bigger, to make the bigger dragonfly. Another component is the Dandy laser cut paper. It comes with 2 sheets. This is one, so you have a variety of card fronts plus some embellishments to use. And this is the other sheet. It's got some coordinating dragonflies, and again, some beautiful tags and layering elements that you can use for cards. It also comes with the beautiful ladybug trinkets, which look like this. Adorable little additions to your card. Another embellishment is the Mossy Meadow braided linen ribbon, and I know you probably won't be able to see it on camera, but it is very braided and very pretty. It's got some nice texture to it. And last but not least is the beautiful Dandy Garden Designer Series paper. It comes with a variety of designs. These dragonflies can be cut out using the Dragonfly Punch. And here is the other side with coordinating colors and designs. And although I don't have them, another couple of components of the suite, the Dandy Garden Memories and More card pack and the companion Dandy Garden Memories and More cards and envelopes, which pair together very simply to make beautiful cards, along with, of course, the rest of the suite. Thanks for joining me today, and stay tuned for card number 2. It'll be on the Dandy Garden Suite of the Month playlist. Bye-bye.